Hi, and thank you for joining us here at Tax Talk UK, where we talk about all things tax and try to help you to navigate the tax system as it applies to you. So, we've had a lot of questions on MTD for private landlords. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. Before I do, if I could just please ask, if you're new here, please do take a moment to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way, you'll easily be able to refer back to the information if you need to, as well as being able to navigate to a whole host of information on a whole host of different topics, all aimed at helping you to interpret the tax system as it applies to you. If you go along to the playlist section of our YouTube channel, there you can find the playlist where we have loosely catalogued the information into topics. So on to today's topic then, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the overview of making tax digital for private landlords. We've had a whole host of questions on this topic, so I'm just going to give a general overview at this point and try to cover as many of those questions as I can. So, making tax digital for landlords then is something that has been in the pipeline for a little while, but it is now going to take effect for some landlords, the first sort of cohort, as it were, in April 2026. So that's not so long away. So it is important that you do understand what it is, if you're affected, and when you'll be affected, and of course, how to know whether you're affected and what you will need to do. So, private landlord, then we're referring to anybody who has rental income. You would know this because you would be reporting this on a self-assessment tax return as rental income. And whether you are needing to be mandated or when you are going to be mandated depends on your turnover of your combined income. And I'll talk about that um, in a moment. But in terms of being a landlord, when we talk about the turnover or your income, if you use an agent to manage your property and they receive the rent in from the tenant, deduct, say, their fees and any other costs that they've paid and give you the difference, that is not your income. Your income is the actual total rent that is received from the tenant. So when you are completing your self-assessment tax return, you should be putting in there anyway the total income, as in the total rent. That shouldn't be just what you receive from the agent. It should be the total rent as the income, and then the cost of the agent come off of that and would be entered into the expenses. So for a start, it's important when you're considering your income that you are considering the full rental income that you receive. So the next thing to think about is any other income that you have. So this is only relevant at this stage if you are self-employed. If you have an employee job and you are paid through PAYE as an employee, then you will only need to worry about your rental income when you're considering the turnover thresholds. If you are self-employed, you also need to add to your rental income your turnover from your self-employment. And again, this is the money, the sales that you are receiving. So those are the times that you need to combine your income. Only if you're also self-employed as well as a landlord. If your income is you have other income and that's not through self-employment, then that won't be relevant at this point. So once you've got your total income, so whether that's just from your rental income or you've also had to add self-employment turnover, then this will determine when you have to start complying with the Making Tax Digital rules. So in April 2026, if that total income turnover is over 50,000, then at that point in April 26, you will need to start complying with the rules. If your total income turnover is over 30,000, then that will start in April 27. And if it's over 20,000, that will start in April 28. So remember to find out what your total income is, we're talking about as a private landlord, what your total rent is from your tenants. And then only if you're self-employed, you also need to consider your self-employed turnover. As I mentioned already, if you have other sources of income, but they are not self-employment, then at this point you would only consider your landlord income. If you're self-employed, you add the two together. That gives you the threshold. That gives you your total income, your total combined income to know when you will have to comply. So April 26 for turnover of 50,000, a turnover over 30,000 or income, combined income, should I say, is from April 27 and 20,000 is from April 28. So now you should have been able to know whether you are going to have to comply and when that will take place from. Now, what is making tax digital? What does it mean? What will I have to do differently? So essentially, currently, as a landlord, you will likely just complete your self-assessment tax return at the end of the tax year, which tells HMRC all of your rental income and your costs. That determines your profit from your rental income, and that helps to determine your tax liability. So from once you start complying with making tax digital, what that means is on a quarterly basis. So every 3 months, you will need to tell HMRC how much income you had and what your expenses were. So it won't be as detailed as your tax return in that you don't need to do any adjustments at this point. You will still do a self-assessment tax return at the end of the year. I guess the way to think of it is just that this is how I'm getting on to HMRC. This is my income. This is my expenses. So the simplest way to do that is to use some software. So if you choose some Making Tax Digital compliance software, you can link your bank account to that software and simply allocate the transactions, rental income. This is what the different expenses were for. And if you do that and you keep it up to date, then this will mean that once you come to the end of each quarter, all of the information will be there and the software will be able to, at the touch of a button, just sort of send that information as is required. And then at the end of the tax year, you will have all the information ready for what you will need for your self-assessment tax return. So hopefully that starts to help you to understand what Making Tax Digital is, whether you will need to comply with this, how to find out if you need to comply, and when you will need to comply. So if you are a sole trader as well as a private landlord, then you will need to find out from the software you choose whether you will need to have a separate license for your self-employment and for your landlord. You may decide anyway that you want to keep them separately. As you can see from how I explained, if you use software linking the bank account, one thing to mention there is it is handy to have a completely separate bank account where your rental income goes into and your costs come out. Obviously, if you use an agent and you receive the income from them after some costs have been deducted, the software should be able to sort of work back on that for you, or you will need to make a manual adjustment, but ultimately you need to make sure that you are reporting the actual rental income, not just the total money that you receive from the agent. So that will be down to the software. If so another question that we've been asked is, if I use an agent, will they do it for me? I would say that you need to ask them. Chances are that they won't be, but they will, they may have people that they can refer you to that could help you with this. But it is your responsibility ultimately, not your agent. So unless they proactively have contacted you to say, to offer some assistance, then you need to ask them if they are giving any assistance. And if not, you need to make provisions, because you are the one that would be penalised if it doesn't happen. And as I say, you will need to check with your agent. So, of course, as with everything, if it's something that you are finding difficult, you don't really understand, then it may be worth employing or engaging the services of a professional to help you with this. If you are going to do that, whether it be via your estate agent or your letting agent, if you're using one or any other source, you should always check that the person that you are engaging is qualified to do what they're engaged to do, and that they have professional indemnity provisions to cover for that. Because as I mentioned earlier, it is your responsibility. So you need to make sure that if you're outsourcing that you are outsourcing that to somebody that does know what they're doing. But it's not mandatory, of course. If you feel that you are able to do it yourself, then that's absolutely fine. Much the same as with your self-assessment tax return. So as I say, if you use some software, that will make the process much sort of easier, because otherwise you will have to have some sort of bridging software to send the information in, which that it can be more simpler to just use the software. And at some point in the future, although not on the headline at this point in time, obviously bridging software is kind of an interim measure. So it's not especially going to be around for forever. So any questions, of course, let us know, and we will try to give some information on the specifics of this. We already do have some information on our videos that are already available, so have a look through those. We have general making tax digital information, as well as information specifically for landlords, not just on making tax digital, but on other aspects as well. So it may seem daunting, but the thing is to just sort of chip away at it. Firstly, find out whether or when you will need to do it, and then have a think about what changes. Think about what software you might like to use if you're going to go down that route. Think about if you want to engage somebody to help you. If you're going to use the software yourself, it could be worth doing that in advance of when you have to mandate to the Making Tax Digital, because that will give you the opportunity to familiarize yourself with the software before the point that you have to actually make the quarterly reports to HMRC from it. So thank you very much for watching. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel. Thank you. Goodbye.